Hello, and welcome to your second Puncty Bite for the week of January 23rd. I wanted to begin today by looking at something that's sort of hot in the news, H5N1 influenza virus. And maybe some of you remember a couple weeks or about a week before the semester started, there were some researchers in the Netherlands that had genetically engineered a more virulent strain of H5N1, and they have caused somewhat of a stir within the scientific community because obviously this strain is something that can be very, if it were somehow to escape the lab could be, it could be a disaster, I suppose. And so there's just been a lot of contentious issues that surround it. And just today there's news talking about how they have suspended the research for about 60 days, which is pretty unprecedented. It hasn't really happened since the 1970s. So I thought you guys might enjoy looking at this. This was in the New York Times. So if you have a chance, it may be something to read through. That being said, I want to talk just a little bit about scheduling and things that we need to get done. So this week, as I mentioned, is the week of the 23rd. For most of us, we'll be doing labs 2 and 3. Of course, for Katie and Craig, you guys will be running off to do lab 4. So I'll say a few notes on lab 4 as well. Kelsey and Noah, this week is your week in open lab. So remember that you'll want to get somebody to cover for you if you're unable to come to open lab from 12:10 to 2 this Friday. I will be there this Friday, so thank you to Chelsea and James for being able to cover in my absence and taking care of everything, and I hope everything went really well. Okay, so in terms of Lab 2. Oh, real quick before we jump into Lab 2 material, I wanted to also mention, don't forget that you all will be doing the lecture for Lab 3, so you're going to want to sign up for those lectures, and then you'll want to start to think about up and coming lectures. I haven't really signed up for a lot of lectures, so I'm more than glad to take one lecture each day. So we'll take a look and see what best fits everybody's schedule, but we'll want to start to think about that as you guys will be beginning to do some of the lectures. So in terms of getting the pre-labs written, I noticed that I did check on the one that will open first for Lab 4, which is obviously for Craig and Katie, and that one looks good, and it looks like you guys are set to go. Just a reminder that if you haven't gotten Lab 4 pre-lab done, this would be a good time to get that all finished off so that it can open immediately after Lab 3. One note on in terms of updating grades on eCompanion, I'm going to pull this up here and try to show you without showing any student grades, just how to get to your pre-lab grades to update them after your students have taken the pre-lab so that their scores will show up in their grade book. So most of you know how to do this, but just in case, you find the grades to date drop-down menu under the grade book, and you go down to the pre-lab unit and just click go, and then that'll bring up the pre-labs, and then you can go into whatever your section is. So say that you were Group C, Pre-Lab 1, and you click on that, and then you can go in and update the scores for the students. So essentially, if they got a 25, that's a 2.5, so you just type in 2.5, 2.5, and then you just say save changes, and that will update their scores in the gradebook. After you've done that, you'll want to go into the toolbox once again and release the answers so that the students can go back and review and see the answers to those questions. Okay, marvelous. Now, that I think is most of our bookkeeping information, and a brief note that if I did email you about going and visiting with Sandy Decor, please do remember to get that done. That would be absolutely marvelous. Let's talk just a little bit about Lab 2, and I'm going to pull up the TA guidelines. We talked about this in the last Puncty Bite, so I'm not going to say much. The only thing I'm going to remind you of is to please be ready to demo the smear preparation technique, as well as showing your students how to go to oil immersion on the microscope. So an effective demo there can just be simply going through the smear prep cooking show style, and then finally once that smear prep is done, going ahead and showing them how they might put it on the microscope and bring it up to high power. Okay, that's all for Lab 2. Lab 3, I have a couple of notes reminders, I guess. On Lab 3, it will be again the first lecture that you'll be doing as TAs, so be ready for that, and this TA guideline can help you to do that. I put in a lot of extra anecdotes and things that may be helpful in your preparation. The other thing on Lab 3 is that you're wanting to assign the Gram-Stain report today, so you'll want to make sure that the students are aware of that report and the due date for that report, and just make sure there's some sort of announcement made regarding that. For your Gen Micro students, and I'm not sure where the Med Micro students are, but for Gen Micro, today will be their first exposure to the gram-positive and gram-negative cell wall structures. So you might want to get the models and for one thing, take your time going through that coverage and maybe get the models out and be like, showing them and demoing what's really going on with the gram-positive and gram-negative cell wall. So don't assume that this is something they already know and that you're just reviewing. Okay, for lab number 4, so this is not the one that most of us will be doing this week, except for Craig and Katie. But Craig and Katie, you guys will be going on to lab 4 in your Thursday lab, and then the rest of us will be thinking about going on to lab 4 for next week. With this one, it is a little bit more in-depth lecture. There's a few more nuances to it, and if you're having trouble with anything regarding the lecture, please let me know. Pronunciations, dipicolinic acid, things like that that may be giving you trouble. Let me know, and I'll help you out before you get ready to do that lecture. In terms of time and drying time, it's best if we can get the students to do their capsule stains before we start the lecture, which can be a little bit confusing. But if you just remind them you're just taking a loop full of milk, putting it onto a slide and letting it dry. It's not a very technical procedure, but if we let it dry during the lecture, the capsule stains come out 100,000 times better. So it's so good if we can get that done prior to doing the lecture. Now, also in terms of lab number 4, one more thing. Make sure the students are preparing for lab 5, because remember, that's dilution problems, and I'll try to give that lecture for the most part, and just FYI, I will go sign up for that lecture in most cases. But if you're a more experienced TA and you want to give that one, that would be absolutely fantastic to give me a break. But it's important that the students do go through ahead of time and kind of get prepared for it. Okay, I think I'm feeling tired tonight. We had a wonderful weekend at the University of Denver's Invitational with the ski team, and we had actually some really great performances this weekend, so I was very proud of our athletes. I hope you guys also had a wonderful weekend, and I look forward to seeing all of you this week.